the very future of our city, not only educated, but engaged and loved. So once again, I'd like to...
All right, everybody. So you are currently listening in to Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot welcome kindergarten through 5th grade students back to the classrooms for the first time in a very, very long time. So I did promise you a live report with our guest, who is Mr. Tim Dohrer, Director of Teacher Leadership at Northwestern University. He is joining us live here on News Now from Fox. Mr. Dohrer, how are you? Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I hear it's a nice day in Illinois.
It's a beautiful sunny day. Good day to start school.
Absolutely. Well, you know, we were just listening in to Mayor Lori Lightfoot welcome children back. Yesterday, thousands of students returned to the classroom. And really, does this mean starting over for teachers and students? They've been learning via Zoom and tablets for so long. So how do children really get back into the swing of things?
This is, in many ways, like starting over. In fact, we could think about the reports that all the news agencies would be doing right now if it were August or September, and we'd be talking about the return to school and the great excitement that comes along with starting school. But at the same time, it is not August or September. It has not been a normal, usual, what we're used to kind of year. And so while there is a lot of that same excitement, and I think we need to acknowledge what a great moment this is and how exciting it is, this is also very different. They're not walking into sort of a normal school situation, and we have to be aware of that.
And, you know, unlike last spring, where we began in person and shifted to remote, some students and teachers have actually never met each other in person. So will this take some time to adjust?
It really will. And we've been talking about this since last spring. You know, when we finished the last school year, you know, those kids and those teachers knew each other very well as they went to remote learning in the spring. This is an entirely different situation. We have, in some cases, not just students who have not been inside the building that they are going into today or this week for the first time. We have teachers who are actually physically seeing these students for the first time. You know, one of the things that's happened with remote learning is a number of schools have rightly so allowed students to turn off their cameras. So we even have teachers, and I know teachers right now who have not physically seen their students very well. They've seen black boxes on the screen or ceilings as their camera's been turned up. So this is a really different experience for all of them. And I think one of the things we need to recognize is that while teaching is about, you know, academics and learning things with the brain, there's a physicality with both teaching and learning that we've not been able to enjoy as we normally do. So this is going to be a big difference, big change for both students and for teachers.
And Dr. Dohrer, we still have restrictions in schools related to physical distancing, face coverings. A lot of these children are babies. They're in kindergarten and elementary level age. So how do you really work with these children to understand what is going on in order to keep them safe in the classroom?
Well, this is going to be, you know, this is the challenge that we have that our educators are going to need to rise to, and our students as well, and I know they will. You know, we think about our younger students; those are the ones. Many of them are coming back to school here in Chicago, where, you know, I'm an English teacher by trade. When we teach things like reading and speaking and listening, you know, the ability to see our facial expressions completely, the ability to hear a student or watch their mouth make a sound so we can help adjust them to making sure that they're saying the words correctly, that's all hidden underneath a mask. I was talking to a principal last week who said, hey, Dr. Dohrer, if you can figure out a way to create a face shield that doesn't fog up, you know, we're trying to use transparent face shields. They fog up. You know, these are the challenges that we have right now. We have to understand, again, it's not business as usual. It's not going to be the same. Kids aren't going to be sitting next to each other. They're going to be separated. In some cases, we have dividers up, you know, all kinds of different changes. The lunchroom doesn't look the same. Playgrounds don't look the same. You know, this is going to be an unusual for those kids who are coming back to school. It's going to be unusual, but we are at least going to get them back so they can physically see their teacher, physically hear them better, be able to interact better than what we've been able to do up till now.
Absolutely. And that's a really good point, because I've actually in the last year heard from several kindergarten teachers. And again, going back to that elementary level, you are teaching students how to use their words, how to pronounce things. So how do you do this while wearing a mask? Is there a loophole on how to teach children the alphabet and how to say certain things when there are all these protocols in place?
Yeah, and think about even the physicality of teaching numbers and math, the ability to see and manipulate objects. I mean, that's critical to early math learning. So, this is a challenge. Now, I'm hopeful because there are some things we can do in the classroom that will help with this, even if we are masked up and socially distant. There are wonderful, technology helps us in a lot of ways in schools these days, because we can do things now projecting images so everyone can see it. Teachers can manipulate those immediately. We also know that there are manipulatives. We can give them, and we'll have to wash them all down afterwards, but we can do that. There's a lot of things we can do now. And my hope, as I know the educators across this country are so good at doing, we take kids from where they are to wherever they need to be next. And I know that our very, very creative educators are going to figure out even new ways of doing that when they can't sort of be in that close proximity that we're so used to having.
Now, speaking of teaching, a lot of these schools still offered the option to have children learn virtually. So now these teachers are going to be trying to tend to children in the classroom, and then also tend to children via Zoom or Skype or however they plan on doing it. How does that work? Do you have any recommendations for teachers that will have to do this?
Well, I hope everyone sort of thinks about what this looks like in a classroom, because it means that, and we already know we don't have even 50% of our students coming back to school in some cases, or in other schools where they've been hybrid, they are seeing just 50% or fewer in their classroom. So you're sitting in the classroom and you're teaching maybe a small group of kids who are sitting there or in the room separated, and then you've got a screen and you're talking to a whole bunch of other students who are online, where you're looking at all those boxes again. They each need individual things. I mean, teaching is a complicated act when we're trying to individualize instruction for every kid in a group of 25 or 30 students. Now imagine that we have to do that not only with the students who are in front of us, but students who are online, or vice versa. And who am I talking to? Who am I directing my attention to? This is hard stuff. We joked about multitasking, and we know the brain really doesn't multitask very well. This is a huge undertaking. We're seeing across the country schools that have been doing this now for months, and we've gotten better at it. We're figuring it out, but we're not there yet. And for anyone who's starting this week, this is going to be a gigantic undertaking. We're already 6 months in the air. We only have a couple of months left. Teachers are exhausted, and now we're adding this to their plate. It is not an easy ask that we're making, both of our teachers and of our students, who have to now also be like, where's my friends? Some of them are online, some of them are in person, and they're all masked. I mean, it's just a really difficult situation that we're in right now.
And now, you and I spoke a little bit yesterday prior to the interview, and you said, Regina, believe it or not, there are some children that have been thriving while virtually learning. So how do you kind of have these children back in your classroom and deal with the fact that they might find in-person learning difficult and maybe get a little anxiety stricken?
Yeah, this has been, the greatest experiment in the history of American schools. There's never been anything like this. And what we learned, we knew before that we had some kids who had great anxiety or great difficulty when it came to going into a school building and going into schools. There's all kinds of issues. We've been talking about bullying and harassment for 15, 20 years now, and how do we get kids to treat each other better? We've had rising cases of mental illness before the pandemic. We've had all kinds of issues of school refusal with kids all the way as early as kindergartners who are refusing to go to school because of anxiety issues. And when the pandemic hit, for some of them, that was actually a relief that they didn't have to go into school and they didn't have to deal with their, the issues that they were grappling with. And they've done actually okay during this online remote learning situation. We've also had the opposite happen where the kids who were thriving by being around other kids and being in school suddenly were isolated. And we've had a growing number of those students who are grappling with mental health issues. So we do need to think about that. While for many kids, this is going to be a celebration. I'm so excited to get back to school or get into school for the first time. We do have some kids where this is going to be really frightening and overwhelming. And whether that's an older student who's going back, who's used to school, or a brand new student who's going for the first time, we may have some issues of separation. We may have some issues of anxiety happening. And so teachers have to think about that as well. How do we welcome those kids back into school in a way that's going to make them feel comfortable getting back into the school building?
Now, there is absolutely no doubt, no matter what job you do or where you're going, the future is very unpredictable right now. But I know you were saying yesterday, you already know some educators who are trying to map out next fall and trying to plan for scenarios in the fall. What is your advice to teachers that may be trying to get a little bit ahead of themselves?
Well, I think, again, one of the other lessons the pandemic has taught all of us in the world, and certainly in schools, is that we really can't predict anymore what's going to happen. There's really not an administrator who could tell you exactly what's going to be happening come September. And so what they are doing, and this is what we should be doing, is we need to have multiple plans. We have to have a plan A, a plan B, a plan C, a plan D. It means more planning than we normally do to get schools up and running. And the other thing is that one of the things we did see going into this fall is that those schools that made an early decision on whether they were going to be in person or hybrid or remote were able to spend the summer doing some amazing professional development with their teachers, getting them ready to do whatever it was going to be. If it was going to be fully remote, then they were getting, the schools that are really doing well during this pandemic, again, they're not doing as well as they could have if they were in person, but they're doing okay, is because they had the foresight to say, this is where I think we're going to be. Let's prepare the teachers. Let's prepare ourselves for that. That's what I think teachers and administrators need to do as soon as they can, after they get some rest after this year, is to start thinking about the fall and have plan A, plan B, plan C, and plan D.
All right, Dr. Tim Dohrer at Northwestern University. Is there anything else you'd like educators, students, parents to know? If they could take one thing away from this interview, what should they do?
Well, I think we have to think about every kid experiences the world in a different way. And so as much as we can, we need to respect that. We need to individualize their experience, understand that for some kids, this is going to be the best day of the year. For others, it's going to be a little scary. And for our teachers and our families who have been supporting these kids, we just need to give ourselves a break and not overwork the situation, but say, let's take this one step at a time and see where it takes us.
All right, Dr. Tim Dohrer, Director of Teacher Leadership at Northwestern University. We thank you for your insight, and thank you so much for joining us here on News Now from Fox.
You're welcome. Thanks.
A huge thank you to Dr. Tim Dohrer and all of our live guests here on News Now from Fox. Our show wouldn't be possible without them. A lot of big topics to cover, especially, the way sending your children back to school is impacting your family, the way your children will learn, your children's mental health, like you heard him say, teachers' mental health. So